Hollywood's first cosmetic rule was simple: ignore your eyes and trust chemistry. We trace the three secret, impossible colors: yellow for light, red for shadow, and blue for a blinding highlight, that created the immortal, high-contrast faces of the 1920s. The vanishing art of shadow and light. Every great legend of the silent screen possessed a face unforgettable, from Charlie Chaplin's stoic mask to Buster Keaton's unmoving composure. But that iconic look was born from a secret, counterintuitive art that defied natural beauty, turning the stars into strangely colored canvases in the harsh light of the studio. The myriad films produced between the dawn of cinema and the introduction of sound in the year 1927 captivate us still. We are drawn by the glittering expressions and the very strange, high-contrast makeup that defined the era. The answer lies not just in cosmetics, but in the technological infancy of the medium itself. At the heart of the Golden Age's initial decade, filmmakers faced a profound visual dilemma. The camera was not yet capable of seeing the world as the human eye did. To capture an image, the film stock had to be chemically manipulated. The earliest versions were remarkably sensitive to some colors, while utterly oblivious to others. This technical limitation necessitated an artistic revolution. The glamorous facades of Theda Bara and Rudolph Valentino were not accidents of fortune. They were the result of painstaking technical artifice. The actors were literally painting a mask onto their skin, a mask specifically designed to trick the camera. They had to exaggerate every feature, redefine every shadow, and create a new version of their face that existed only on the silver screen. In the studio, away from the camera's judgment, the actors often looked genuinely unsettling. Their faces, coated in thick, waxy grease paint, were colored in shades that seemed to mock the natural palette: pale yellows, deep indigos, and even scarlet tones. A star like Rudolph Valentino would walk the set with skin that appeared sickly yellow, his cheeks marked by vivid scarlet stripes. Yet, when the lights went up, that bizarre mask was instantly transformed into the elegance and high drama the world would soon adore. To understand why this was necessary, we must first look to the theatrical tradition that predated Hollywood. Film borrowed heavily from the stage, importing actors, sets, and especially makeup conventions. Before the first moving picture was ever shot, stage actors had already perfected the art of painting their features to read under unforgiving illumination. This tradition began with a brilliant invention in the theater, long before the film camera, that created the initial need for oil-based paint that would become the basis of silent film glamour. This stage foundation offered a starting point, but the unique properties of the early film stock demanded a complex science. The cosmetics needed to be thick enough to obscure every slight imperfection. Any small blemish on the skin would otherwise register on film as a distracting black mark. The natural skin tone itself, when photographed without enhancement, became dull and dingy, losing all its vitality. The legends of the Silent Age thus stepped into a creative trap. They had to look unnatural in real life to look perfectly natural on the screen. This secret history begins under the harsh lights of the theater, where a brilliant invention forced actors to find a new medium for their craft. From gaslight to grease paint, the stage legacy. Before the camera, there was the curtain. Theatrical tradition laid the foundation for Hollywood's strange face paint, starting with a revolutionary invention in stage lighting that abruptly forced actors to reinvent their entire look. For much of the 18th and 19th centuries, theatrical performances took place inside venues illuminated by soft candlelight. This soft illumination was atmospheric, but not bright. Actors used moderate, powdered makeup that did not require extreme precision or heavy application. This age of subtlety vanished with the arrival of the gas lamp. Suddenly, stages were flooded with a brilliance never before imagined. This new, intense light source rendered the actors' faces nearly invisible, washing out their features. A new cosmetic medium was desperately needed to restore definition. And so, grease paint was invented. This intensely pigmented, oil-based paint was thick and opaque. It allowed stage actors to apply a heavy, defined layer of color, capable of standing up to the bright gaslight. Applying this new medium was instantly recognized as both a science and a dedicated art form. This invention arrived just as the fledgling motion picture industry was taking its first steps. Early films were captured on film like silent plays, borrowing heavily from stagecraft. Actors brought their established routines, and the makeup they applied was just as heavy, oily, and greasy as what they had worn for the theater. The harsh, artificial lights required on an indoor film set presented the exact same problem as the gas lamps. The light was too bright, and the old-fashioned, delicate powder was useless. But while stage lighting presented one set of challenges, the film stock itself presented a more profound chemical complication. The camera was about to introduce a technical barrier that required a completely counterintuitive palette, forcing actors to paint their faces in shades that looked absurd to the naked eye. The stage had provided the paint, but the film camera was about to dictate the color. Hollywood's newest legends would soon discover that the film stock they relied upon was chemically indifferent to the warm, vibrant half of the light spectrum, changing the art of visible makeup into an alchemy of shadow and light. New Jersey's early canvas, the transition to film. The siren song of the silver screen lured countless stage actors from New York's boards to the fledgling studios, many of them initially located in New Jersey. These performers brought with them their stagecraft, grand theatrical mannerisms, and heavy, oil-based grease paint. When cinema was born, the first sets were built like theater stages. Early film directors took their cues directly from the masters of the stage. Actors relied on their most familiar tools. The cosmetic conventions that evolved under gaslight were transplanted wholesale to the film studios. The transition, however, was not seamless. The camera demanded a level of sustained visual clarity that the stage had not required. The grease paint introduced new difficulties. The film's emulsion reacted to light in strange ways, turning familiar colors into shades of gray that could profoundly distort the actor's appearance. What looked acceptable on stage could look ridiculous on the silver screen. Imagine a leading man applying reddish powder for a healthy glow. On early film, that reddish hue would darken dramatically, giving him an unsettling, almost bruise-like appearance. The film medium, that tiny strip of celluloid, had its own eccentric demands, and its chemical indifference to certain colors created an artistic crisis. This crisis forced the early makeup artists to become technical pioneers. The goal shifted from simply making the face visible, as it was in the theater, to making the face read as three-dimensional, expressive, and luminous on a two-dimensional, monochrome screen. They soon learned a vital lesson. The natural human skin tone was entirely insufficient. Without enhancement, the stars of the silent screen appeared dingy and lifeless. They needed a base that would register as a flawless, bright white. The solution lay in manipulating the color spectrum itself, creating a series of counterintuitive shades that would appear elegant in black and white, but which seemed utterly absurd to the naked eye. This marked the crucial divergence between stage makeup and the unique cosmetic alchemy of the silent film era. To truly understand this magnificent illusion, we must now delve into the science of the film itself, a science that mandated that the vibrant colors of life be replaced by a technical palette of opposites. Orthochromacy, the unforgiving lens. The greatest secret behind the silent film look wasn't makeup. It was the film itself. The earliest motion picture film stocks were orthochromatic, a technology that saw the world in a profoundly unnatural way, forcing every actor to learn a brand new cosmetic language. To comprehend the illusion, film stocks are fundamentally just light-sensitive particles. The very first commercially viable cinematic stocks were almost entirely sensitive only to the light found in the blue and purple parts of the color spectrum. This technology was termed orthochromatic, a bit of a misnomer, as its vision was far from natural. The crucial scientific truth for the ideal silent film star was this: orthochromatic films did not register the warm part of the light spectrum with any vigor. As the light shifted toward the orange, yellow, and red hues, the film's sensitivity tapered off dramatically. This had a singular, shocking consequence. Pure red photographed as pure black. Imagine the artistic and technical chaos this created. A vibrant red rose would appear on screen as a somber, inky shadow. This principle meant that colors that looked entirely natural in real life would look drastically distorted on film. It was a chemical blind spot that presented an extraordinary challenge. The actors could no longer trust their own eyes. They had to trust chemistry. A Caucasian actor's unadorned skin, which contains natural tones of pink and red, would appear on the screen as a dull, dingy gray. Any slight reddening of the skin, a small blemish, or a flush of emotion would instantly transform into a distracting black mark. This fundamental truth, that the film only reacted strongly to blue light, became the most important piece of knowledge in any silent film makeup artist's arsenal. They needed to find colors that contained almost no red pigment, while simultaneously finding colors that would register as brilliantly white under the blue-sensitive lens. The necessity of achieving high contrast luminosity led artists to search for colors on the opposite side of the spectrum. The delicate art of human portrayal was now an exercise in technical paradox. To look like a living, breathing star, the actor first had to look like a spectral figure of yellow and blue. The ghostly foundation. Why stars went yellow. Imagine applying a foundation so pale and luminous, it made you look ghastly in person. To the unforgiving orthochromatic camera, the natural complexion of an actor registered as nothing more than a dull, lifeless gray, requiring an extraordinary cosmetic measure. In the earliest days of cinema, some actors mistakenly painted their entire faces a pure, stark white. Directors quickly realized this approach was too severe, resulting in performers who looked like spectral figures. A slightly more sensible, yet still entirely counterintuitive, base was required, one that was thick enough to mask imperfections, but warm enough to appear alive on screen. The immediate challenge was the presence of any red in the natural human skin. Since the orthochromatic film photographed red as a deep black, even the slightest capillary or natural flush would become a very noticeable, distracting black spot. The base makeup had to be applied with complete opacity. Makeup artists of the era discovered that the natural, unaffected skin tone of many actors, laden with pinks and reds, simply photographed as an unappealing shade of gray. Without enhancement, your own beautiful complexion looked like a diseased blur. The solution they landed upon was one of the strangest compromises in the history of cosmetics. A very pale yellow, or a light, cool-toned pink. Why yellow? Because this pale, buttery color contained almost none of the dreaded red pigment that spelled disaster. When struck by the bright studio lights, this yellow base would photograph as a magnificent, flawless, and brilliant white. It was luminous, providing the high contrast backdrop needed for the eyes and mouth. The yellow foundation became the secret weapon. It provided the cinematic brightness required, transforming the actor's face from a dull, gray blur into a radiant canvas. The technique was demanding. The heavy, waxy grease paint had to be applied uniformly and thickly and carried all the way down the neck. This choice of color, utterly ridiculous in the reality of the bustling studio, was the only choice that gave the stars their immortal, on-screen glamour. The result was a ghostly sight in person, yet a glorious one on celluloid. Now that the canvas of perfect, luminous yellow was laid, the artists could move on to sculpting the features. They had solved the problem of brightness, but they now faced the next great challenge, using the camera's blind spot to create dimension and shadow. This would require an even more astonishing leap in counterintuitive color application, using the very shade the camera avoided seeing most to define the contours of the star's legendary face. The allure of the luminous yellow base. The actors had to wear this thick, waxy base, ensuring it was blended perfectly onto the neck and hairline. The pale yellow was the key to luminosity. It contained almost none of the darkening red pigment, registering instead as a bright, matte sheen on the screen. The early film studios demanded enormous amounts of light. This challenging environment required a base that was both utterly opaque and chemically resistant to the camera's blue-sensitive nature. The light yellow grease paint fulfilled both requirements, neutralizing the subtle variations and flaws of human skin. The technique of application was highly demanding. Makeup guides instructed actors to apply the grease paint in thick strokes, ensuring complete coverage, and then blend the product meticulously. This blending was essential, as any thin spot would allow the actor's natural complexion to register as a dark, irregular patch. The ideal result was a uniform, faultless mask of light yellow. This luminous canvas provided the cinematic brightness required to make the star stand out. Once the base was applied, it would be topped with a generous layer of colorless translucent powder. This step was critical, ensuring that the face did not continue to look glossy or greasy under the relentless heat of the studio lights. The final effect, to those observing the filming, was unnerving. The star would look unnaturally bright, almost feverish, with a strange, sickly yellow cast. Yet, on the film, that same face would radiate elegance and classic glamour. It was a remarkable, if uncomfortable, compromise between reality and artifice. For the actors, submitting to this chemical transformation required discipline. They had to learn to trust the invisible technology, trusting the makeup artist's judgment over their own mirror's reflection. They were, in effect, painting themselves with the camera's vision in mind. With the luminous foundation secured, the makeup artists could proceed to the true artistry of the silent screen, using color, which the camera avoided seeing, to sculpt the face into three-dimensional shadow. The next step was perhaps the most astonishing paradox of all, using the rich, forbidden color of red to create the illusion of darkness and definition. The scarlet trick, contouring with red. In a profound act of cosmetic counterintuition, silent film artists contoured their famous faces with the very color the orthochromatic film avoided seeing, red. Red, the color of passion and life, became the silent cinematographer's most potent and paradoxical sculpting tool. Contouring is not a modern invention. The early makeup pioneers understood that the flat, luminous yellow base required definition. They needed to create the illusion of cheekbones, slim the nose, and define the jawline. Yet, how could they create shadow on a film stock that only registered light colors? The solution lay in the orthochromatic camera's great scientific limitation. Since the film was almost entirely insensitive to red, any pure red pigment applied to the face would register on the final print as a deep, rich black. The color of life became the color of darkness. By applying powdered rouge or blush to the areas associated with shadow, under the cheekbones, along the temples, the makeup artist could strategically place areas of manufactured darkness. This meant that the stars often had vivid, startling scarlet stripes painted onto their faces, particularly across the apples of their cheeks. These stripes, running diagonally from the earlobe toward the corner of the mouth, looked for all the world like a fresh sunburn or a clown's mark in person. But on the screen, those bright red patches vanished, replaced by sophisticated shadows that lifted the cheekbones. This technique required precision, demanding that the red pigment be blended perfectly into the yellow base. The makeup artist had to exercise careful restraint. If too much red was applied, the shadow would register as an inky black rather than a nuanced gray. The discovery that the camera's blind spot for red could be used to create perfect shadow was a monumental moment in cinematic artistry. The success of the red contouring was vital to the star's glamour. It ensured that the leading lady achieved the sculpted, ethereal look the camera demanded. It also allowed the leading man to maintain a rugged, defined masculinity. It was the ultimate artistic deception, using a bold, vibrant color to represent a mere absence of light. With the luminous foundation and the strategic use of scarlet shadow now in place, the artists turned their attention to the focal points of the human face, the eyes and the mouth. These features were the very engines of silent performance, and their definition required an even more dramatic contrast, turning to the opposite side of the spectrum, the blue tones, to create the illusion of magnificent brightness. The indigo shade, the blue highlight. Illusion beyond the dramatic red contour, a strange cooling color was applied to achieve magnificent luminosity. For the camera, the opposite of darkness, was the color it loved most, blue, the tone that would create the illusion of light itself. Since the orthochromatic film stock was most sensitive to the blue end of the spectrum, any pigment applied in a shade of blue, purple, or indigo would register on the film as intensely bright, almost luminous white. The actors, having already applied a yellow base, that photographed as white needed an even brighter white to create the effect of a true highlight. This led to the subtle, yet deeply strange, practice of using blue powder or a pale lavender cosmetic in areas intended to catch the light. The makeup artists would carefully dust this indigo shade onto the brow bone, or sometimes directly under the eye to make the area appear exceptionally bright and youthful. In the studio, this practice gave the actors a distinctly unearthly appearance. Imagine the elegance of Gloria Swanson, her skin painted pale yellow, her cheeks striped with scarlet, and a delicate dusting of blue powder shimmering above her eyes. To the crew, she looked like a theatrical curiosity, yet the result on the screen was nothing short of miraculous. The effect was particularly vital for the eyes. The goal was to make the whites of the eyes appear clear and brilliant. By applying a cool tone beneath the eye, the blue pigment would register as an intensified white, making the whole ocular region pop with high contrast. This use of blue was the final, ingenious element in the high contrast equation. The yellow base provided a uniform, bright canvas. The red provided shadow, and the blue provided the ultimate dazzling highlight. The result was a face that existed outside the realm of natural color, a masterpiece of monochrome designed purely for the camera's consumption. The makeup artistry of the silent screen was a delicate three-part harmony of color: yellow for light, red for shadow, and blue for superluminosity. This technical mastery ensured that the actor's face was fully legible. Now that the luminous canvas was complete, it was time to turn to the true engines of silent performance: the eyes and the mouth. These features required a contrast so dramatic that they could convey entire worlds without speaking a single word. If you are captivated by these fascinating secrets and lost arts of Hollywood's golden age, do not let these stories fade into the past. Subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell to ensure you never miss another deep dive into the glamour and ingenuity of early cinema history. The soul of the silent screen, the eyes. If a silent film star had but one true asset, it was the raw, emotional power of their eyes. These windows to the soul needed fierce definition to convey entire worlds of feeling without the aid of a single spoken word. Since the eyes were the primary vehicle for emotion, they required a cosmetic treatment that elevated them above the uniform brightness of the yellow-based canvas. The goal was twofold: to maximize the contrast of the eye against the skin, and to make the whites of the eye appear as brilliantly clear as possible. To achieve this dramatic definition, makeup artists applied a heavy, dense lining, typically using black or a very deep brown pigment, around the entire eye. This was not a subtle line. It was a strong, dark border that immediately focused the viewer's attention. The darkness of the liner registered intensely on the orthochromatic film as a stark black, creating a high contrast boundary. This stark framing made the eyes appear larger and more prominent than they were in life. The legendary actress Bette Davis, though her most famous roles came later in the sound era, relied on this principle. Her famous coal-blackened eyes helped solidify the image of the cinematic vamp, an archetype that relied entirely on a mesmerizing, intense gaze. Even the men of the silent age embraced this heavy definition. The intensity of the lighting only reinforced this necessity. The surrounding black definition absorbed light and prevented the features from being washed out, ensuring that the audience could read every flicker of emotion. This deliberate exaggeration of the eyes was a fundamental lesson in silent film aesthetics. Visibility equals meaning. The eyes were not merely beautiful features. They were functional tools of storytelling. Having established the foundation and the definition of the eye, the next step was to define the frame, the eyebrows, which often acted as a second layer of expression and character. The vamp's gaze, defining the eyelash and brow. The exaggerated thick eyebrows and heavily defined lids were essential to create the iconic screen characters: the vamp, the tramp, the lover. This was makeup as a mask of emotion, defining the actor's identity before they ever moved or gestured. While the eye itself was lined for visual punch, the surrounding frame served to solidify the star's on-screen persona. The natural brow was often too faint to register adequately. To solve this, natural brows were frequently removed or entirely concealed, and new, exaggerated brows were drawn on with black pencil or grease paint. These drawn brows were powerful architectural elements. They were often thinner, longer, and more sharply arched than natural brows. This exaggeration was necessary to convey even the most minor, emotional shift across a vast theater screen. A slight downturn of the head could instantly communicate grief or shock. Consider the star Theta Bara. Her image was defined by her fierce, dark eyes and meticulously sculpted eyebrows. Her dramatic, heavily lined brows were an indispensable part of her illusion, communicating a powerful, unwavering intensity. This deliberate use of the eyebrow as a tool for storytelling applied to all genres. For the comedian, the dark, mobile brows would be exaggerated to convey mischief. For the tragic heroine, the sharp, downturned arch amplified sorrow. The lashes, too, played their part, achieved with heavy mascara or pasted-on fringes that would register as a dense line of shadow. This combination created an indelible focal point. The eyes, now fully framed in black, were ready to command the camera's attention. But the third critical component was the mouth. And makeup artists knew that applying the wrong color here would ruin the entire illusion. They had to find the color that could convey the warmth of life without succumbing to the camera's blind spot for red. The pink secret, the unspoken truth of the silent lip. On orthochromatic film, straight red lipstick, the shade of romance and feminine allure registered as a harsh, unappealing black stain. Actresses had to find a shade that conveyed femininity and warmth without darkening their mouth into a severe shadow. The mouth, being the second great engine of silent expression, required exquisite attention. If the eyes conveyed the inner turmoil, the lips conveyed the immediate emotional reaction. Yet, the film's blind spot for red pigment was a serious liability. The most fashionable color for women in the 19-teens and 20s was a vibrant, deep red. However, when this true red was applied and captured by the orthochromatic camera, it transformed into a deep, somber black. It wasn't just dark. It was a severe, flat black disc, a jarring void that consumed the light and made the mouth look disproportionately small. This robbed the actress of her ability to convey softness or vulnerability. The actresses quickly learned a pink secret to make the lips appear natural, full, and expressive on screen. They had to choose a shade far removed from true red. They experimented with colors that were cooler, lighter, and contained more blue pigment, a soft, cool pink, or a neutral, blushy color. The cool pink would register as a soft, medium gray on the screen. This created the perfect contrast against the luminous white face, without descending into the black severity that true red produced. This medium gray allowed the fine lines of the lips to remain legible, resulting in the iconic, beautifully sculpted bee-stung look. Not every star complied, of course. But for those who embraced the technical necessity, the cool pink became an indispensable tool. It was the color of compromise, allowing the illusion of natural warmth to shine through. This necessary departure from the color red created a subtle ripple in cosmetic history. The screen's most glamorous lips were often colored in discreet pale pinks, a fact later distorted by an even more bizarre color myth. While the cool pink served the elegant actress, the next chapter's color anomaly proved that the camera's strange demands could become even more outlandish. The myth of the green lip. A peculiar myth endures about the silent age, the whispered legend of the green lip. While this strange shade did exist in cosmetic history, it served an entirely different revolution in moving pictures that arose decades later. The persistent notion that silent film actresses used green lipstick is a fascinating case of historical confusion. The vibrant, startling green hue was reserved for a medium far more challenging than orthochromatic film. The true home of the bizarrely colored lip was not the cinema of the 1920s, but the nascent world of early black and white television in the 1940s and 50s. Early cameras were notoriously low contrast and low resolution. On those early television screens, the elegant gray tones achieved by silent film makeup often blurred together. To make the lips stand out, makeup artists were forced to resort to truly outlandish colors. Bright green, and sometimes even a lurid purple, became the unexpected shades of choice. The elegance of the silent age required subtlety. The brutal efficiency of early television required a lurid chemical scream. The green lip was an example of form, following the flawed function of the camera. Since green and blue registered differently than the pale foundation, they provided the necessary artificial contrast for the low-resolution image. This is where the two historical streams, the silent screen and early television, mingled in popular memory. Both eras required actors to look ridiculous in person, to look defined on the screen, but for different chemical reasons. The silent film industry battled the camera's blindness to red. Early television battled its inability to distinguish between close shades of gray. By understanding the science of the era, we can separate fact from folklore. The legendary stars of the silent screen achieved their immortal close-ups with the pale pink secret. The vibrant, jarring colors of green and purple were reserved for the brave pioneers of the small screen. Having established the cosmetic rules for the leading ladies' lips, we turn now to the gentlemen. The leading men of the silent age had their own strict cosmetic rules to follow, to ensure their masculine expressions registered with clarity and strength. The subtle pencil, lip makeup for leading men. Male stars, too, had to submit to the brush. Their lips needed subtle definition to keep their strong, masculine expressions legible in the monochromatic frame. The image of the Hollywood leading man, rugged, stoic, and strong, required just as much artifice as that of the glamour queen. For a star, like Rudolph Valentino, the power of his presence lay in his nuanced expressions. If his mouth appeared as a blurry, indistinct shape, the impact was instantly lost. The primary necessity for the men was to ensure their lips did not look too pale or too dark. To navigate this paradox, makeup artists employed a meticulous two-step process. First, the lips were covered with a light application of pale grease paint to neutralize any unwanted redness. Second, a subtle pigment was used to outline and fill in the lips. This pigment was typically a muted, neutral brown, or a grayish color. This neutral shade was chosen because it photographed as a light, legible gray, providing the necessary contrast. The goal was clarity, not glamour. This subtle cosmetic work allowed the men of the silent screen to convey the full range of their dramatic capabilities. A firm line of the lip could indicate unwavering resolve. A slight curve could suggest amusement. Had they foregone this work, their mouths would have become a soft blur, robbing their stoicism of its power. The meticulous attention paid to the male lip underscored a crucial truth. Every single feature on the human face was a functional tool designed to tell the story. With the lips defined and the luminous canvas set, the face was nearly complete. But for many stars, a final defining stroke of black pencil was required above the lip, the elegant, unmistakable signature of cinematic sophistication. The man behind the mask, the pencil mustache. For many Golden Age heroes and comedians, a simple line of hair above the lip became an indispensable part of their identity. The pencil mustache was a signature of cinematic sophistication and character. The cinematic mustache was far more than a fashion statement. It was a powerful tool for visual storytelling. The neatly manicured, thin pencil mustache immediately suggested sophistication, worldliness, and often subtle villainy. For the leading man, the presence of the pencil mustache lent an air of cosmopolitan elegance. A star like Rudolph Valentino, renowned as the Latin lover, sported a meticulously groomed mustache that amplified the mystique that made him the object of fervent adoration. The pencil mustache was also crucial for the great comedians, becoming an indelible part of their iconic costume. Charlie Chaplin's instantly recognizable toothbrush mustache was a deliberate piece of comic exaggeration. For these performers, the mustache was applied with the same precision as the eyebrows, a bold line of black grease paint. The black pigment provided the maximum contrast against the stark, pale yellow foundation, ensuring that the feature was sharp, legible, and defined the character's face. The slightest change in the mouth was framed and amplified by the dark, decorative line above it. The pencil mustache completed the portrait of the male silent film star, eyes heavily lined for expression, a mouth subtly defined for clarity, and a dark, refined line of hair for character. The face was now fully armed for performance. We have now explored the full alchemy of the silent film mask. But no amount of technical explanation can prepare us for the surprising reality of the silent film set. We must now confront the true shock, what these magnificent stars actually looked like to their colleagues when the cameras were not rolling. If these hidden historical details have sparked your interest in the elegance of the silent age, please share this video with a friend who appreciates the glamour and ingenuity of classic cinema. Sharing these stories keeps the golden memories alive. The color shock, the on-set reality. We are left to imagine the unsettling sight. A group of legendary stars walking around the set, their faces a pale, contoured canvas of yellow, red, and blue. The visual reality, far from the polished glamour of the final film, was often a genuine shock. For the studio hands, the sight of a fully made-up silent film actor must have been a daily curiosity. Imagine the elegant Gloria Swanson, with a luminous yellow grease paint base. Her cheekbones would be sculpted by vivid stripes of scarlet rouge, and her eyelids dusted with a strange, pale blue powder. To the naked eye, this look was highly theatrical and unnatural, lending the stars a faintly feverish, almost alien appearance. The colors were chosen not to flatter the human eye, but to satisfy the cold, chemical demands of the orthochromatic lens. The thick, waxy texture of the grease paint, applied under the scorching heat, was also inherently uncomfortable. This visual absurdity underscored the sheer distance between the actor's reality and the character's persona. The ability of these stars to convey genuine emotion through a mask of such artificial colors speaks volumes to their talent and dedication. They had to learn to trust completely in the unseen mechanism of the camera. For historians, the lack of color documentation from this era presents a fascinating challenge. The answer is simple and pragmatic. Because the film was black and white, there was virtually no reason for a photographer to waste expensive, complicated color film to capture a set or a portrait. The rare glimpses we do have are a testament to the scientific ingenuity that had to accompany artistic performance. They confirm that the most glamorous looks of the silent age were achieved through an intensive, calculated deception of the lens. Now that we have explored the strange ingredients, the next natural step is to confirm the science. We must now turn our attention to the modern techniques used to replicate the orthochromatic process, proving that this palette of yellow, red, and blue was perfectly logical. Simulating the silent screen, a technical recreation. To truly understand the illusion, one must replicate the orthochromatic experience, a precise simulation that proves the strange palette of yellow, red, and blue was not strange at all, but perfectly logical and scientifically sound. The rules of orthochromatic photography can now be recreated through modern digital technology. By simulating the camera's sensitivity, or rather its insensitivity, to certain light frequencies, we can finally witness the method behind the cosmetic madness. This allows us to step back in time and view the actor's face as the early lens would have seen it. The simulation begins by acknowledging the film's limitation. It was primarily sensitive only to blue and green light, and almost entirely unresponsive to red light. To replicate this, one must dramatically reduce the presence of the red and green color channels. The results are instantly illuminating. The pale yellow foundation registers as a brilliant, glowing white. More dramatically, the vivid scarlet stripes of rouge instantly deepen, transforming into the perfect shades of dark gray and black. This proves that the makeup artist was using red not as a color, but as a technical proxy for shadow. The most impressive revelation often concerns the eyes. The deliberate application of black liner and the subtle touch of blue highlighter achieve magnificent definition. The whites of the eyes pop with high contrast, while the blue pigment registers as a blinding white. This ensures that every subtle expression is preserved. This technical recreation confirms that the makeup was not merely artistic preference, but a scientific necessity. The cosmetic choices were a complex solution to a technical problem, demonstrating that the bizarre colors were the most accurate means of achieving a naturalistic, glamorous effect in a chemically unnatural medium. Having used science to explain the illusion, we can now state the conclusion with confidence. The silent era makeup was the very height of technical ingenuity, successfully navigating the camera's limitations to create stars whose light remains undimmed. The high contrast truth, logic of the artifice. The final stunning revelation is that the strange makeup worked flawlessly. It was the pinnacle of technical ingenuity, turning the orthochromatic camera's weaknesses into the silent film star's greatest visual strength. The sophisticated art of silent film cosmetics, which at first glance seems absurd, reveals itself upon scientific inspection to be a system of pure logic. Every application of color was a calculated move designed to navigate the restrictive language of the early film emulsion. The high contrast aesthetic was necessary because the silent image demanded immediate, unambiguous clarity. In the absence of sound, the audience had mere moments to absorb an emotion or a character's intent. The combination of the luminous yellow foundation, the scarlet contour, and the indigo highlight created a dramatic, yet perfectly balanced, range of grayscale tones. The yellow provided the brilliant white light, the blue provided the ultimate highlight, and the red, which the camera avoided seeing, provided the necessary shadow and definition. This triumvirate of pigment ensured that the face was transformed from a three-dimensional object of color into a perfectly rendered, high-contrast, monochrome image. The makeup artists of the Silent Age were, in effect, performing alchemy. They transmuted color into light and shadow. They understood that the physical appearance of the actor on set was irrelevant. Only the final image captured on the film mattered. The stars who mastered this art were rewarded with screen immortality. Their faces became the very definition of glamour, their expressions etched forever. This systematic deception of the lens allowed them to convey every nuance of human emotion, proving that necessity truly is the mother of invention. The orthochromatic era and its demanding cosmetics had created a unique artistic moment. Yet, a better solution was waiting. The system dictated by yellow and red was about to be rendered obsolete by a new innovation, a change that would signal the beginning of the end for this magnificent, bizarre art form. If you find this logic behind the Golden Age glamour fascinating, consider sharing this story with fellow classic film enthusiasts. Sharing these untold historical details helps us celebrate the ingenuity of the silent era stars and their dedicated craft. The dawn of color, the end of an era. By the mid-1920s, a new technical marvel began to take hold: panchromatic film. The era of strange artistic makeup was rapidly drawing to a close, signaled by the arrival of a chemical change that saw all the colors of life. The orthochromatic film was chemically superseded by a superior product. This new emulsion was called panchromatic, sensitive to all the colors of the visible light spectrum. This technical triumph had immediate consequences for cosmetics. For the first time, film could faithfully reproduce tones as they appeared in real life. Skin tones no longer rendered as dull gray. Vibrant red lipstick would finally photograph as a beautiful, legible medium gray. The entire cosmetic rulebook was instantly obsolete. The luminous yellow foundation was no longer required. Its use could now make the actor look overly pale. The stripes of scarlet rouge would now photograph as distracting dark patches. The entire art of using counterintuitive colors vanished overnight. The actors were free to wear makeup far closer to what they wore in their private lives. The heavy, thick grease paint was replaced by lighter, more subtle foundations. Makeup could finally be applied to flatter the actor's human features. This change marked the beginning of modern film cosmetics, moving the craft from chemistry to genuine artistic enhancement. Panchromatic film arrived just years before the next great revolution, the introduction of sound. Hollywood's second revolution, enter sound. The coming of sound solidified the end of the silent screen's unique visual style. The actor's need for highly exaggerated visual cues faded as dialogue finally took center stage. The arrival of synchronized sound. In the late 1920s, famously ushered in by the jazz singer, represented a profound revolution. This change didn't just alter the makeup, it fundamentally changed the very nature of cinematic performance. For decades, the silent film actor had been a master of visual melodrama. The makeup was designed to amplify this physical language, ensuring that a subtle eye roll registered with the same power as a shout. With the advent of the speaking picture, the actor's focus moved from the external physical conveyance of emotion to the internal subtle conveyance of character through vocal performance. This shift immediately rendered the heavy, black-lined eyes and the boldly drawn brows obsolete. Such intense visual definition now looked over the top next to the quieter, more naturalistic acting style required for dialogue. The camera demanded that the actors look less like theatrical masks and more like real people. The great pantomime artists now had to restrict their grand, sweeping gestures, replacing them with a simple whisper or a calculated pause. The result was a final evolution toward subtlety and naturalism. Makeup artists refined lighter foundations, focusing on enhancing natural beauty. The heavy grease paint gave way to lighter creams and powders. Furthermore, early sound recording equipment placed limitations on cosmetics. Sensitive microphones picked up the sticky sound of heavy, oily makeup being manipulated by facial movement. This practical concern only reinforced the need for less visible cosmetics. The age of the strange, beautiful mask had conclusively ended. The cinematic revolution ushered in by sound granted the screen a new voice, but it cost the art its unique, dramatic silence. The makeup that had served the greatest legends faded into history, completing the transformation of film into the medium we recognize today. The enduring legacy of the mask, the brilliance of Buster Keaton, the fire of Theda Bara, and the undeniable presence of Charlie Chaplin. These are the faces that became immortal, perfected by an art form that relied on illusion and the ingenious deception of the camera. The cosmetic rules of the silent screen era may have faded, but the foundational lessons of technical ingenuity endure. The makeup applied to the stars was not just about making them beautiful. It was about making them legible and powerful, a principle that remains crucial to this day. The high contrast aesthetic that was born from necessity laid the groundwork for later genres. Without the silent era's mastery of shadow, we would not have the stark, glamorous, black and white imagery of the film noir period. The stars who mastered this art are themselves the most enduring part of the legacy. They were required to act through layers of counterintuitive makeup, yet were still able to convey profound human emotion. Buster Keaton's unmoving face required the heavy makeup to ensure that the slightest flicker of his eyes registered as a deliberate statement. Similarly, the intensity of stars like Theda Bara or Rudolph Valentino was only possible because they trusted the technical process. Their genius lay in transcending the absurdity of their appearance in the studio to deliver raw, captivating performances. The golden age of the silent screen was defined by a magnificent collaboration, a fusion of scientific limitation, cosmetic creativity, and extraordinary acting talent. Their faces, perfected by a vanishing art, continue to tell stories of passion, sorrow, and triumph, forever cemented in the public imagination. As a testament to the incredible courage it took for these legends to step onto a set looking utterly alien, trusting that chemical chaos would render them immortal. The artistry of the Silent Age was a beautiful, complicated deception, a reminder that the greatest glamour is always a magnificent illusion. If this journey into Hollywood's vanished craft captivated you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we continue to reveal the hidden secrets that keep the golden memories of classic cinema alive.